24 years ago today, we saw the release of Jurassic Park 3. Well, today we're going to take a look at a little behind the scenes featurette and kind of take a little stroll down memory lane. I love Jurassic Park 3. And before the Jurassic World trilogy came out, the general consensus among people were, sequels obviously have diminishing returns. People weren't that big a fan of Jurassic Park 3. It's kind of like a time capsule of that era of filmmaking. It's definitely a product of its time. It's very much different from the Jurassic World trilogy, even Rebirth that was just released. It's going to be interesting to talk about this film today, so let's get right into it. On today, the anniversary of one of my favorite entries into the series. Let's do this.
It is a fascinating exercise to sort of look back on the whole Jurassic experience, because when I think back to when we first started doing Jurassic, we looked at a project that we were in awe of trying to figure out how we were going to execute it.
The first Jurassic became sort of history, this extraordinary puppet technology of Stan Winston's and the CGI stuff of Industrial Light and Magic reached a kind of critical mass. What surprised me and probably pretty much everyone who worked on the film was just how swept away one would be by the experience of watching it. I was aware that we were doing something that was probably going to be exciting, but I had no idea how well it would work, or indeed how successful it would be in terms of how many people went to see it, which is a lot.
Ready? Yeah, there's no denying the cultural impact the original Jurassic Park had, even The Lost World to a slightly lesser extent, but still, those two Jurassic Park movies, those first two movies were huge for good reason.
And action!
Now, the real challenge is, once you've moved past the novelty of making a movie with things in it that no one's really seen before, how do you sustain the storytelling so that you still preserve the novelty of seeing dinosaurs, but you keep people enthralled in what's going to happen to whomever encounters these dinosaurs?
I think they did a pretty good job with that, what she's saying there. However you feel about sequels, obviously there's always going to be diminishing returns when you do sequels with things. I definitely think there's an exclusion with that somewhat to, let's say, I've seen an exclusion to an exception to the rule with literature and to a lesser extent video games. Sometimes you can get a franchise that just goes on indefinitely, and sometimes that might happen in visual media. You look how long like Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, Tom and Jerry have been around, and they're quite an enduring and endearing thing. But with movies specifically, the further into a series you get, usually the diminishing returns become greater and greater with each entry. Now, for me personally, I didn't start that, really wrapping my head around that concept until I was a little older with the Jurassic World movies. I really liked Fallen Kingdom, but Dominion I just was not a huge fan of, and that's when I started to realize, this series may be going to a place to where I can no longer like openly defend it and tell people to go see it. Thankfully, Jurassic World Rebirth changed all of that for me, and I think that it was one of the greatest entries in the series. But before the World series kicked things off and kind of revitalized interest in the franchise back in 2015, you had 2001's Jurassic Park 3. And again, no matter how you feel about sequels, I absolutely adore this movie. I loved every minute of it. It has so many quotable lines, so many comedic moments that aren't they're not comedic in a way that mistreats or abuses the material. It's a way in which you can enjoy it without it ruining the film, if that makes sense. I don't know.
We want the third movie to be as exciting, if not more so, than the other two. And we're pushing ourselves harder than anyone else could push us to make this tremendously exciting.
Is that? It's a Tyrannosaurus.
I don't think so.
Now, as far as making it bigger and better than the first two, that's always going to be subjective, but I don't think so. But Jurassic Park 3 is gatekeepy, but not in a real world sense. It's gatekeepy for the characters in the universe, which is fun in its own right, because in the first two films, you grew up with these movies, with these animals, seeing how dangerous these islands are. And now here's a handful of characters that are so oblivious to where they're going and the real danger that they're in. And it's fun just to watch that aspect of it, if for no other reason. But she does have a very good point. How do you, 3 movies in, keep the novelty of dinosaurs on screen? And that's even one of the main themes that comes up in Jurassic World itself, in the canon even of the Jurassic series. By the time you get to World, is what do you do if you just keep this going? You know, people are going to get tired of seeing these animals. They're going to say, okay, big whoop. And she has a good point. At this point, CGI is moving out of its infancy, and it's getting to a point where it's being used in most movies, and it's starting to look better with each year. And using puppets and maquettes and real on set equipment is becoming less as CGI kind of ramps up and takes off. Of course, there's been plenty of filmmakers that have misused and abused CGI. You know, I don't want to name names or get into a whole thing, but I think people immediately know who I'm talking about when I say that. So.
Everybody set. Here we go. Ready and action!
When we got to the point of realizing that the first movie was such a success, Joe Johnston, who had worked with Steven Spielberg on a number of movies going back to Raiders of the Lost Ark up at ILM, came to Steven and said, if you ever consider doing a second Jurassic, could I do it? And Steven said, Joe, I think I'm going to do the second one, but if I do a third, you're my first choice. So when we decided to do the third movie, Steven immediately went to Joe.
This is one of the great franchises of all time, and I love the Jurassic Park movies. And I also was very flattered that Steven would ask me to do it. It's a lot of trust that he's placing in me. It's a huge responsibility.
I've chartered an airplane to fly us over Isla Sorna, and we'd like you to be our guide.
We spent a great deal of time trying to think, what story can we come up with that's going to take people back to a place that I think will allow them to have a good time, but at the same time it feels new and exciting and hopefully original.
We have a landing.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem, I think, with Jurassic Beyond the Lost World, is how do you get people back to the island? And that does tie back into what I was saying about this being fresh and new for the characters in the film, you know, aside from like Alan Grant's character. But these people have no idea where they're going or what's in store. You know, it's like in The Lost World when he says, what did you think you were going to see? Lizards, big iguanas, you know? I definitely see why there was such a huge gap between, you know, Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World. The franchise needed time to cool off, and had it gone anywhere else in between, I think it would have really been a spectacular failure, because one of the big criticisms for movies like this is that it's teeth chasing people, and each one, in my opinion, does kind of need to be its own self-contained adventure. It's the reason I like Jurassic Park 3 so much. It's the reason I liked Rebirth so much, is because, yes, while they are barely touching on the lore? Why do I always say lore? Lore always mispronounce lore as lure. They always touch on the lore of the whole series, but you can go in and just watch that one film without having to watch a series. And I think that's crucially important to these adventure set pieces like this. It's one of the great things about Indiana Jones is that he's just your generic every adventure man. You don't really have to get too deep into his character. Each one of those films can be viewed individually, and you'll have a great fun adventure, a sense of adventure just watching those movies.
Strip up ahead. You want me to put her down?
No. I told you I want to circle first, see the whole island.
What do you mean set it down? You can't land here. What are you talking about?
Hold on. I can explain.
Well, you cannot land on this island.
It's a rescue mission, primarily. A divorced couple's child is lost on the island through a parasailing accident. This divorced couple has to reunite and pretend to be married so that they can lure Alan Grant into helping them find their son. They think he's been on this island before. He hasn't. They basically trick him, kidnap him, get him on the island, and then find out that he's never been there before.
I have never been on this island.
Sure you have. You wrote that book.
That was Isla Nublar. This is Isla Sorna. Site B.
Alan Grant, of course, hasn't been near a live dinosaur since he got off that island by the skin of his teeth all those years ago. Now he's clearly older and gnarlier, and certainly wouldn't have gone back to Jurassic Park voluntarily, having had a horrendous experience the first time. So it's really by nefarious means that he gets there at all. And he certainly wants to get off as soon as he possibly can. It's no fun, running for your life.
Dr. Grant? Paul Kirby, Kirby Enterprises. I just had a daughter, and the idea of being able to do a Jurassic Park, which I know she will see, just was irresistible. It's one of the great franchises of all times, and it's turned out to be such a fabulous experience.
I was very interested in doing a movie that would have epic special effects that would be even more spectacular. And I knew going into this that we have the technological advantage that, given 10 years, the improvements that have been made with CGI, with the animatronics, are really astounding. So this will stand on its own in many ways.
Every character should be interesting and watchable and should have something about them that makes them interesting,
I think we've put together an ensemble group where we've once again returned to the notion of civilians being on the island. So now we have the everyman returning to the island.
When I first began to talk with the director, Joe Johnston, about sort of the look of the film, and he had some very, 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 very specific ideas. Now, Joe wanted this jungle to look a little bit more primordial. So rather than it being all lush and green and shiny and pretty, what we're going to try to do is to make it look a little bit more old, a little bit more kind of rotten, a little bit more sort of swampy.
The jungle on stage 12 was the single biggest set that Ed had to design, and it's the one that's in the movie more than anything. There are shots that we did on stage 12 that it looks like you're outside. It looks like you're on location in Hawaii.
It does look amazing. I definitely believe one of my favorite aspects of Jurassic Park 3 was the tone of the set itself, just the overall feel. It took me back to the way that I felt when I played the Sega Genesis Jurassic Park game. There was just something about these jungles that felt like I was back in the prehistoric era, even though it's not technically how it would have looked. I think grass evolved more recent than dinosaurs, oddly enough. But it's one of those things where they did kind of have they kind of messed up a little bit, and they had to kind of go back and retcon and do some fixing, because the island, it's the same exact island as in the Lost World Jurassic Park, but these islands, these two movies look vastly different. So how do you explain how the same island looks completely different in two films, two back-to-back films to boot? So I think people came up with, and I don't know if fans came up with this and they adopted it into canon afterwards, or maybe this could have been something that was even in the novel. The funny thing is, I never actually got around to finishing the Lost World novel. Something that I keep intending, to sit down and do, but I just don't. Shame on me, I know. But yeah, apparently with Isla Nublar, all of the island kind of looks more or less the same. But with Isla Sorna, you end up with an island that's almost kind of split down the middle. You have highland and lowland areas. And people even refer to the raptors in this film as, I want to say, highland velociraptors. I don't remember if it's highland or lowland for this film, but not to mention the raptors have a very different look and feel, which I'm pretty sure they'll touch on in this video. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but I loved the way these islands look in each film, and I love the fact that you can't tell you're not outside and that you're on a set.
First time I looked at the movie, when we finally got it all together, I mean, I had to stop and think, is that Hawaii or is that Stage 12? Because it intercuts, so seamlessly. That is Ed Verreau, but it's also Shelley Johnson, the DP, who was able to take that set on Stage 12 and make it look 2 or 3 times bigger than it really was, just with lighting.
To be very honest, my job started very early when they were just trying to get the idea of the movie. And I came in and I actually got to come up with some of the animals and some of the storyline.
How would you classify it, Billy?
Well, it's a super predator. When we were trying to put the story together, we wanted something different. And Tyrannosaurus Rex had sort of been in charge of the first 2 movies. This time we wanted something that was actually going to replace T-Rex, and so we actually went after a dinosaur that literally could cause an extinction on the island. And the Spinosaurus is and was the biggest meat-eating dinosaur that ever lived.
No, I don't think so. I want to say they used that exact same explanation for Jurassic World Dominion. What was the largest carnivorous dinosaur? We're just going to ask the internet. Really? Spinosaurus aegyptius. What about the Giganotosaurus? Other giant carnivores like Tyrannosaurus and Giganotosaurus were massive as well, generally in the 40 to 43 feet range. None of them consistently outsized Spinosaurus based on current fossil evidence. All specimens are reevaluated. Well, never mind. I guess he's right. It's just, I remember somebody saying something about Giganotosaurus being the largest terrestrial carnivore with the dinosaurs, but I don't know. I guess it was the Spinosaurus. Of course, the Spinosaurus, the idea behind what the Spinosaurus looked like has changed drastically. I think we can give the award to the Spinosaurus, actually, of the dinosaur that's changed the most over the years. Because even just from 2001 to the year that I'm making this video, which is 2025, just in 24 years, this thing has evolved. People have studied and put together the fossil in multiple different ways. Like when this film came out, the Spinosaurus was larger than the T-Rex in height and both length. And the movie shows it, standing on very long legs like the T-Rex. But then now, most fossils that you see put together and most artist renditions of it have the Spinosaurus shorter and closer to the ground and more horizontal. Like the T-Rex is at somewhat of an angle here, but now they're saying the Spinosaurus would have been completely horizontal and more of an amphibious kind of creature and spent more time in the water, and its hands or claws or whatever are now more webbed when you see them, and it's more of a swimmer. And the tail went from being a single lizard-like tail, like with the T-Rex and the raptors, to now it's this big fin-like thing. So I never know from one year to another what the Spinosaurus is going to look like anymore. Of course, in the Jurassic canon, nothing looks like it would have anyway because of the genetic manipulation and the filling in of the missing sequence in the DNA.
Spinosaurus was discovered, I believe it was in the late 1800s in the Middle East. And the largest example was about 56 feet long. The largest of the T-Rexes is about 45, 46 feet. There was no doubt that Spinosaurus was a predator. The Spinosaurus looks a lot different from T-Rex. It's got about a 5-foot long jaw. It has a very crocodile-looking snout. Spinosaurus also has a sail on his back. It stands about 7 feet tall.
From what Jack says, this was a carnivorous, lethal, flesh-eating creature that was bigger than the Tyrannosaurus and had even larger claws that were more useful than those embarrassing little spindly arms that the T-Rex has. Because the T-Rex was essentially just a big mouth, as far as I could tell, and this is just a more effective killing machine in every way.
In addition to that, we're dealing with pteranodons, and I think the audience for a long time has been hoping that we would bring flying dinosaurs into this genre, and we had a perfect opportunity to do that with this. So we did, again, a lot of work with Jack to analyze just how big these things got, and they were quite enormous and quite scary. And we put together a fairly intense scene that probably defines this movie as being what's different from the other two.
The Pteranodon is one of the things that Hammond's company was doing without telling anybody about it. They were hatching a lot of different dinosaurs that they didn't admit to, and when they moved out, they basically left the cages open and everybody got on the boats and planes and got out of there as quick as they could. So there are a lot of things running around that nobody knows about.
Oh my God.
What is it?
It's a bird cage.
For what?
The fascinating thing about why I think these movies have worked so effectively is that they still utilize all the tools of special effects.
That's very much true. They do utilize all of the special effects. Not only do they, use CGI, which was still growing, and they used practical effects as well, and puppets and things like that. I think what made Jurassic Park 3 great, or one of the greater things to me, because a lot of things made it great, but like I said before, I think that the characters in the film are kind of surrogate to audience members who might not have seen the other two films, or might have seen bits and pieces of the other two films, not for hardcore fans. So you have, you're able to kind of sympathize and empathize with these characters, who've never seen these animals up close and in person. So somebody who might have seen this film first, they're seeing these special effects for the first time. They're seeing the animatronics, they're seeing the CGI, and they're having their minds blown at where technology was at the time that this film was made. But then, like I said, it's also a very fascinating case study for people who were hardcore fans of the series, who had seen the first two films 1,000 times. People like me who grew up with it and were obsessed, still are to this day, going in and seeing this movie, knowing that we were going to see the raptors and the T-Rex, and we had already been through this twice. We kind of knew what to expect, and then here were all these things that we had never seen before. The Spinosaurus, something bigger and more dangerous of a threat than the T-Rex itself, and then the Pteranodons. Like she said, it was something that had been part of the novels, something that they showed on screen for 2 seconds at the end of The Lost World. People had clamored for a long time to see flying dinosaurs and whatnot, and here we were finally getting it. So as much as we felt like we had been here and done this, it was very fresh, new, and exciting to see new animals on screen for this series that we had not seen before. So that, again, is another one of the big reasons that I think Jurassic Park 3 was successful, and I loved it so much, and one of the reasons that I think you should see it, and that it's not just a sequel for, the sake of cynical cash grab. I guess it could be considered that, but what product that we consume isn't at the end of the day? You know what I mean? I've been hearing everybody complain for the last decade. It kind of started with South Park talking about member berries and how they're just repackaging things from our childhood and bringing them into the future now that we're a good 10, 20 years or more older. And they're just kind of reselling and repackaging our childhood and our memories. And it's something that previous generations really didn't have that. You know, I think about my parents being in their 60s, and I think about the IPs that they grew up with and how they changed so dramatically for a modern audience. And I don't consider that like, I'll give an example. My dad was born in 1960. He would have grown up with the 60s Spider-Man cartoon. Do you know how vastly different all modern Spider-Man media is compared to that 60s cartoon? So I think we're the first generation that you've been able to capitalize on our nostalgia in the way that companies have. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And Jurassic World is kind of a good example of that, to where for me personally, it was about a 50-50 draw.
What Stan Winston Studios has continued to do is they keep moving the bar with regard to what they're doing in the world of animatronics and puppetry. And Stan Winston's studio and the people who work there have brought a tremendous amount to the believability of these characters.
It starts on the drawing, you know, it starts in sketches, color renderings, maquette, sculpture, and then I walk in and go, whoa, you've changed him. And so from drawings to sculptures to maquettes, new ideas are birthed as we develop. In Jurassic Park 3, I believe my favorite new dinosaur is the Velociraptor. And the Velociraptor was in Jurassic Park 1. And the Velociraptor was in Lost World. And the Velociraptor is back in Jurassic Park 3, but in a way we've never seen it. Get behind me.
You start thinking of them as being other personalities on the set. It'd take at least 12 people to work each of these creatures, and so they are a combination of the intelligence of those people that are working them.
It's literally amazing. It's like they really look real. And it's really fun being able to work with animatronics and doing the CGI, because I really have never done anything like that before.
There's something quite humbling about working on a set where it's the best of the best doing their very best. Stan Winston's dinosaurs here, I mean, this is the pinnacle. Nobody anywhere in the galaxy can do this better than he can.
The way the Spinosaurus and the Raptor were controlled were telemetry devices, which is a machine that resembles the shape of the other dinosaurs, where you have a head and you can twist and turn it, and makes the head twist and turn or move the body around. Then you have separate people on arm telemetry devices. On the Spinosaur, they're actually strapped into it so that they move it around, and what they do is translated to the dinosaur.
See, I didn't know that. I've never seen that footage before. I just assumed that a lot of these animatronics were always controlled, you know, like you would a video game with devices and levers and buttons and things. I've never seen somebody suited up. Except for the Raptors. I've seen people wear the Raptor suits.
When you're figuring out how it's going to be done, these different methods come about.
Action, Raptor.
Walking
This
legs,
one.
for example, with the Raptor, which I actually wear and fit inside. We go through each sequence and sort of figure out if we could make these legs move this way, where it's human-powered with extensions on it, and then they can lift and take a step. Or this should be a total hydraulic puppet, because you're going to see it from the knees up, and it's going to be basically planted.
One of the first things that Stan Winston told me when I was going to be working with one of his puppets, he said, I would keep in mind though, these can kill you. You're not working with hand puppets or things like that, socks on your hands. I mean, these are big machines, and they're very strong, they're very powerful, and they can do great harm to you.
Spinosaurus is the guy on the block from this point on. We have a big fight, and T-Rex gets his ass kicked.
we knew that there was going to be a T-Rex Spino battle in this movie. And the truth of the matter is we knew we were going to break something. The Spino literally ripped the T-Rex's head right off because this Spinosaur was so big and bad and powerful. There was just literally no contest between the machines, much less the real animals.
3, 2, 1, drop!
No way.
Our director, Joe Johnston, decided that he wanted to have an airplane crash. And one of the interesting things that you'll see is you will see the principal actors in the airplane.
We haven't landed yet.
Rather than stay very wide and do something CG or try to do something with doubles, we had to design a tree that really was a gimbal that we could put the airplane into and be able to move it around, tilt it, shake it, slide them in and out. In all, we had 3 separate types of planes. We had one that would crush from the outside, one that would crush from the inside, one that would roll, and a 4th one being one that would sit in the tree and rock back and forth and complete the crash. So through the combination of editing this all together, it looks like one plane.
The cast was in that airplane for weeks. It had to crash, first of all, with them inside of it. Then they escaped and run for their lives. But they agreed to do all of those stunts themselves.
We were in the fuselage of this airplane, and Spinosaurus, our old friend Spiny, rolls it across the soundstage, and there was nothing to be done except we got in this thing and just got our asses rolled. It's like spending the afternoon in the dryer. We were banged up.
There's one shot.
I bet they were banged up, but come on, that would have been fun. I do appreciate the fact that the cast did the stunts themselves instead of kind of wussing out and having people come in and do it. That I appreciate.
In that entire sequence where there are stunt people, everything else is done, by the actors.
In terms of preparation, Joe said this is probably going to be the most physical film that you've done. There's no question about that. It's been actually quite demanding physically. And so I had to sort of buff myself up a bit.
I so wish I had been advised to go get out there and start lifting weights and start sprinting and for God's sake start stretching, because we're out here doing these insane little gists where we're going from this side of the stage to the other as fast as we can over rocks and balls. And I tell you, more of the makeup is to cover what you've gotten along the way rather than creating the ones for the job.
There's no question that I think all action-adventure movies today are enormously difficult because the audience expects a tremendous amount now. And in order to deliver that, you're asking people to really push the bar continually on what it is you're trying to do.
Falls Lake was the toughest part of the whole thing, I think, because it had to be at night in the rain, and it involved not only the dinosaur, but fire and smoke and all that stuff.
This is a big and powerful machine. We're talking about 1,000 horsepower. They've got this Spinosaur diving into the friggin' lake. I mean, come on. I mean, he acts in the water. And I must tell you that some of the most dramatic real-life images I have ever seen are of the Spinosaur in the water. I mean, it is some of the most incredible footage I've ever seen. This animal is alive, and he's in the water going after people underwater.
When you work with the animatronics, it's terrifying.
Did she say animaltronics? Is that animatronics? I guess. I mean, animatronics is short for animated electronics. I guess they are animal electronics.
On the other side, there's some hysterical footage of us running through fields away from, well, nothing.
Many times in almost every movie, sooner or later, you just have to pretend. We had to run away from imaginary dinosaurs, and we had to see imaginary dinosaurs. And you just make it up. And it's been amazing to watch these computer guys, men and women, setting up the shots so that they can put the dinosaurs in later.
Basically everything's new. We've got a bunch of new creatures in the way of the pteranodons, the spinosaurus, the ankylosauruses, and we're doing new fun things with them. I think Joe's made it a fun, action-packed film where you're traveling across the island and there are all these encounters with the different dinosaurs.
In this film, more than any of the other ones, we had a chance to have our computer-generated dinosaurs interact with Stan Winston's animatronic dinosaurs. In the other films, we cut from ours to a cutaway of his. In this one, they can actually make physical contact.
Actually, in the dinosaur fight sequence where we have Stan's T-Rex lunging forward and you see the computer-generated Spinosaurus.
That is a pretty great scene. I know there were people who were upset that the T-Rex lost to the Spinosaurus, but come on. I get it. You're such a huge champion for the T-Rex after the first two films, and it's kind of the mascot for the series. It's kind of the mascot for dinosaurs in general. I mean, you think dinosaurs, most people are going to say Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I thought it was pretty great.
It's come from behind and actually bite into its neck. I don't think anybody's going to be able to tell whose is whose, whether it's a CG or an animatronic.
We did it in the Pteranodon sequence as well. And again, the match is flawless. Unless you knew what you were looking for, you probably couldn't tell which was which.
I'm sitting here, but there's 200 people behind me that's working on this movie, and it's an amazing crew.
The process of putting computer-generated dinosaurs on the screen starts with the tactile art of sculpture. That's actually where the design phase of the dinosaur takes place. Once those sculptures and maquettes are done, we get them here at ILM. We scan those sculptures, and then from the scanned data, we can go into the computer and rebuild them. Once the geometry or the outer surface is created, we have to introduce all the animation controls into that geometry so the animators can get in there and manipulate it and can move it, can animate it. What we did early on in this production was to produce believable skin and muscle under the skin, the jiggle of the skin. There was ways we did it in the other films, but it was pretty painful. We wanted it to be a process that was dynamic. In other words, if the leg slammed down, we wanted to see stuff jiggle the way it would and have it happen from dynamic forces that they can generate within the computer.
And then the compositors take all those elements and make them look like those computer-generated images belong in the real live action plate. So it's a huge process, but it requires amazing talent.
Just kicks it in the face. Just bam.
We entered a new era with Jurassic Park 3 in that we can focus more on the craft and the artistry of effects and animation. The tools are known now. Now all the focus and energy goes more into the craft of making these images. And I believe with Jurassic Park 3, you're going to see performance beyond what you've seen in the other movies.
They set a trap. They actually set a trap.
Ready and action!
Joe's wanted to do this for a long, long time, and this is his opportunity to take the reins from somebody like Steven Spielberg, which is not an easy thing to do. Find his own vision, find his own movie, take all those years of experience in effects, and try to make an absolutely phenomenal, fast-paced, exciting Jurassic Park 3, and I think he pulled that off incredibly well.
You look at these dinosaurs, they look real. And then you put this kind of effects team together, the team from ILM and the team from Stan Winston Studio, and you have sort of an unbeatable mix that there's no reason why this shouldn't look and feel beyond anything we've seen in the previous movies.
I personally am very interested in history and prehistory too. I don't think you can ever learn enough about that stuff. But to blend it in with fiction like this is a kick.
The audiences love a walloping good tale well told. The audience basically wants to know what happens next, and this is an adventure film. I mean, it's intense.
The film takes off really quickly, and it doesn't slow. There's barely a moment's rest.
I love having done it, and now that it's finished, I think it's going to be the kind of movie that it needs to be, which is one that's very entertaining and it's going to sell a lot of popcorn.
You probably won't get off this island alive.
Now, Jurassic Park 3 is one of those that I rewatched a million times, just like I did with the first two films. I think I talked about this in another video, but Jurassic Park on VHS in the early 90s was the first pre-order I ever did. I remember my mom pre-ordered it from a local video store. It wasn't even like a chain like Blockbuster or anything, just a local mom and pop video store that we had here at the time. And I didn't know that was something you could do. I was just a kid. I didn't know anything, honestly. But I'd already worn out other VHS tapes in my childhood. The Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. The live action Ninja Turtles. I had those VHS tapes and I wore them out. And Jurassic Park was no exception to that rule. I remember Jurassic Park 3 being one of the last movies I got on VHS, honestly. I remember waiting for it for a while. And I remember my mom was going to go to the store, and it was kind of later at night. And I don't remember why she was going that late. It's not something she typically did, but I said, hey, you know, Jurassic Park 3 is supposed to be out now, VHS. Can you look and see if they have it? And I remember she brought it home, and it was the cover was so Jurassic Park. It was that minimalist cover, because the original Jurassic Park VHS was just a complete black cover with the logo in the center. And I remember the Lost World changed that up. It got really fancy with it. It was actually had a card that you could slip down in the cover, and if you moved it, it was kind of like one of those 3D hologram things. But with Jurassic Park 3, the VHS copy went back to basics. It was just like this, the whole front was just like a steel graphic with the logo in the center. And they had this logo at the time. I think they were trying to kind of upsell the series and say, well, the T-Rex is no longer the main threat. Now the series has evolved and it's gotten bigger and better with the Spinosaurus. But I want to say it was, it had like the shadow of the Pteranodon on the cover. But I subsequently bought all the DVDs over the years and into Blu-ray territory, and now I'm gonna try and pick up the 4K steelbooks. Hopefully gonna buy Jurassic Park's steelbook next month, and then the Jurassic World trilogies the month after that, and then by then Rebirth should come out, and I'll probably get the steelbook for that as well, because I've never done steelbooks for the for films before. I don't think I've ever done steelbooks for games either. I think the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii was the first and only steelbook I've ever had for anything. But yeah, I have great memories of Jurassic Park 3. I wore that VHS tape out as well. I think it's one of the ones I saw on cable a lot right before, leading up to the point where I stopped watching cable. Because I want to say I gave up cable around the turn of like the 2010s, somewhere in there. And I went exclusively from that point onward with just the internet as my source of entertainment. You know, evolving into like YouTube and Twitch and stuff. But yeah, Jurassic Park 3, 24th anniversary this year. I love this film. It is very near and dear to my heart. I understand if people don't like it because it suffers from the same problem a lot of other sequels do, in their opinion, but you're not really going to find me having any complaints from Jurassic Park 3. I think it was beautifully made, well crafted. It's one of the last great adventure films, in my opinion, before the onslaught of just CGI, you know, muckfest of just muddy, terrible looking CGI movies. Of course, like they said in this documentary here, you had the best of the best of the best working on these films, the best in the industry from a creative standpoint to a technological standpoint. So, you know, I didn't grow up with Star Wars and Indiana Jones and whatnot. I grew up with Back to the Future, Jurassic Park. Those were my two, and James Bond. Those were the action movies that I grew up with. So those are the ones that I look back most fondly on. But thank you guys so much for taking the time on today of all days, the 24th anniversary today of Jurassic Park 3. If you haven't seen it, you're doing yourself a great disservice. It is a fantastic film. Like I said, if you've never seen it, you're going to feel just the same way the characters do. It's all going to be new and exciting. And even if you have only ever seen the first two, or maybe you only all saw some of the Jurassic World stuff that's come out more recently, go back and watch this movie, and you'll kind of see the legacy that led up to the World movies, you know, being what they are. But highly recommend it. I appreciate everybody watching. I have a full playlist here on my channel of all things Jurassic World and Jurassic Park, and I look forward to watching more videos like this and getting them uploaded for you guys to enjoy as well. See you, folks.